Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about taking deloads versus taking time off. And I apologize if there's a little bit of beeping every now and then in this video. There's a little construction going on down the street from me that's kind of loud, so it might be coming through the microphone, and I apologize. But let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing. Work on skilling up my crafting a little bit, and let's talk about this. Because, I usually tell people I recommend deloads for various reasons in your training. And, I do get a lot of people who are like, well, when that happens, I just take time off. There are times when I just take a full week off from the gym and just let my body heal, let my mind get away from it because I start to reach burnout and everything else. And there are several reasons why you might actually want to take either a deload or time off. And you're going to find, again, some younger guys who buy into this hardcore mentality are like, oh, I wouldn't do that. I'd never do that. Well, best of luck with your injuries, your burnout, and everything else. That's just not reality. And in fact, some of the best athletes in the world, most of the top athletes in the world, the best of the best do deloads or take time off and everything else. Deloading is a normal part of scheduled training for more advanced lifters and more advanced athletes. It's a normal part of training, is recognized by the best experts and coaches in the world. It's normal. It's not something that makes you weak or anything. But there are reasons you're going to want to take a deload or time off, and I want to break down why I think the deloads are superior. But let's cover reasons why people would want to do that. All right, number one, psychological burnout. There are simply times when you start to get bored of your training, or as old school lifters used to call it, staleness. Who are top level Olympic lifters and everything years and years ago, and even bodybuilders and everyone else. They called it staleness. They're just starting to get burnout. They're losing motivation, and loss of motivation can not only be psychological, that can be a physiological response as well. It could mean that you are pushing your body to the limit too much. You're under recovering just a little bit. And it's kind of your body's way of saying, let's just back off and quit doing this. It can be psychological. Also, when you're training hard all the time and it's a big part of your life, even if you're doing it professionally and you're making a living somehow doing it, there's still going to be times to where you reach burnout in your training. And people who train hard tend to burn out easier. They tend to burn out more quickly, more often, because it takes a psychological toll at times, and people don't always want to just continue doing that all the time. Another big reason is injury prevention. When you start getting inflammation in your connective tissue, inflammation in your joints, these are things that if you just keep pushing and you keep training hard, when you're having either joint problems, they're starting to hurt, you're getting connective tissue inflammation, it starts to hurt, your elbows start to hurt, your knees start to hurt. All right, that's a sign that you're pushing your connective tissue too far. Because connective tissue and things have to heal also. It's not just muscles, it's all the tissues in your body get affected by hard, heavy training. Your bones get micro cracks in them that have to be repaired. That's why bone density increases from weight training. But connective tissue can get inflamed. Connective tissue can get little micro tears in it also. And when they're not healing quickly enough and you keep subjecting them to too much workload and they keep re-tearing and they never fully heal, your connective tissue can start to get inflamed. All right, and it's usually a good idea when you start feeling connective tissue pain. That is absolutely a sign that you've been pushing a little too hard. It's time to back down. And if you don't do that, and you keep going, there are plenty of examples of many people out there who reported a lot of injuries that way. In sports, it's understood that that's when you quit. You get into things like bodybuilding and they'll keep going, but you'll get guys like Dorian Yates will admit, yeah, I've torn multiple muscles because I kept going and maybe didn't listen to my body when it told me to back down. And that's listening to your body when it tells you to back down. When you have connective tissue that hurts, you're pushing too hard. It's time to back down. And by too hard, I don't mean that in a negative way. It's that you might have pushed yourself really, really far to your absolute limits, and then it's time to back down. It's not saying it was a bad thing for you to do that, because it might not have been. In some cases, it was a good thing. But you do have to let your body recover eventually. Because the human body is amazingly adaptable, but like anything else, it's still a machine, very adaptable machine, but it does break. When certain parts of it get stressed too much and they don't get repaired, it breaks. It's just the human body has an amazing ability to repair itself. It doesn't need an external mechanic most of the time, unless you really snap something. In the case, a surgeon's got to come in and fix it like a mechanic. But it's a self-healing, self-repairing machine if you allow it to do so. It's a beautiful thing. Now, as far as you're feeling problems with joints, joints can also be signs that you're pushing too hard, but it also could be a sign that you have a muscle imbalance or you're doing something wrong. But you do need to back down, let everything heal, and then figure out what you did to make your joints hurt, because joints hurting is not a good thing. Again, it's a sign you've done something very, very wrong. And joints should never, ever be repaired or be helped by wrapping them up with something. That's, again, a one-way ticket to Snap City in the long term. You don't ever use wraps to alleviate pain. You use correcting your training, and you use deloading and time off and everything to correct pain in joints and connective tissue. Wraps is the worst idea you could use for that, or sleeves or whatever. Very, very bad idea, because it's a Band-Aid fix. It's just stopping the pain. It's not stopping what's causing it. And then it's giving you a false sense of security. Really bad idea. Again, that's how people get hurt. That's how people get permanent injuries. They get permanent scar tissue, everything else. All right, the other reason is, of course, when you've overreached. And this is what we talk about with planned overreaching. Meaning, this is where dual factor recovery models come in. It's where people intentionally, over time, push themselves beyond their recovery limits. All right, you push yourself beyond what your body can adapt and recover from, its total workload it can handle, so that you create an enormous adaptation. But when you do it long enough, eventually you will regress. So the idea is that just before you start to regress, you back down and let your body heal and recover and adapt to all that previous training where you pushed it beyond its limits. All right, and that's where we come to, either way, we come to deloading or we come to taking time off. Now, a lot of people choose to take time off, and you know what, that's fine. If you take downtime, you heal, you recover, you take a week off from the gym, you will probably adapt and grow. Even if you overreached, you will make some adaptations during that week off. Absolutely going to happen. But here's the big difference, and here's the thing that I would point out. With deloading, you are getting multiple benefits that taking time off doesn't give you. And in most cases, it's going to be superior. When you deload, let me remind people, deloading is usually sometimes reducing your weights by as much as 50%. So if you've been doing 3 sets of 8 with 200 pounds on a lift, you will cut down to sets of 10 with 100 pounds. You will literally cut your weight in half. Cut the weight in half. And sometimes even cut the volume back. You might cut from 3 sets down to 2 sets. That's a deload. You've actually cut your total work by over 50%. But here's the thing that you're doing. Number one, you're continuing to do your primary lifts. By doing the primary lifts, even with much, much, much lighter weights, you're still enforcing several training responses in your body. Number one, you're maintaining the technique on your big lifts. All right, you're not losing that nervous system programming. You're not losing the technique and motor patterns that you've ingrained with your training. You're making sure that it stays fresh, because even coming in and doing something with a lighter weight, you're still practicing it. And people need to remember, exercises aren't just about strength. They are about practice. They are about motor unit learning. They are about technique, and your body remembers those patterns. And if you continue to do them, you will stay better at the exercises that you continue to do during the deload. That's a great thing. Number two, it helps maintain mobility. Because again, sometimes when you haven't moved joints and everything through certain ranges of motion, they can very quickly lose a tiny little bit of mobility. If you're continuing to do your lifts, you're going to maintain all your mobility much easier. I'm not saying that in 1 week you're going to lose mobility. You probably won't, but you can lose a little bit in some cases. This will prevent that. Number three, you're resparking muscle protein synthesis. And it's my opinion and my observation that most people who take deloads instead of time off, they tend to gain more strength as a result of their overreaching. Meaning when they push themselves beyond that recovery envelope, they are stimulating muscle growth. They are stimulating strength. They are stimulating a training response still. Even if they take downtime, they'll probably adapt to all of that and make some benefits. But when you continue to respark muscle protein synthesis, even with lighter lifts, just a little bit of it, you will most likely gain a little bit more muscle than if you had just taken time off. It's not going to be a lot more, but it's a little bit more, because again, you're keeping your body interested in growing muscle there. You're still disrupting the muscle tissue just a little bit, the tissue proteins, not a lot, just a little bit, and resparking hopefully just a little more growth and reinforcing that previous training, but you're doing so in a way that isn't interfering with recovery. Because when you cut workload like that way down, if you normally do sets of 8 with 200 pounds on a lift, to do sets of 8 with 100 pounds doesn't really negatively impact your recovery ability, not meaningfully. So you are re-stimulating a little bit of those training responses without hurting recovery. Now, I will admit there are cases to where downtime might be better. Like if it's been joint problems hurting you and it hurts to even come in and deload, you might be better off just taking time off. And that would be the exception to that rule. But if it's overall you're interested in your progress and your gains and everything, deloading is usually a better alternative. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.